One of my favorite examples is Monty Python and the Holy Grail. They realized they weren't going to have a budget to have a horse on set all the time, and so they used coconuts.
Welcome to Indie Film Podcast. I'm Victoria.
And I'm Chuck. This week we're going to be talking about inexpensive films versus cheap films and why it's so difficult to make an inexpensive film that doesn't look or sound cheap.
That's really difficult.
It is. We've made a lot of missteps ourselves over the years trying to cut budget and get projects across the finish line. So we're going to be talking over the next few episodes about what, Victoria?
We're going to be talking about specifically the difference between planning for a lean budget and making a cheap film.
Right on.
One of those is vastly more acceptable than the other.
I agree with that completely. So let's talk about pre-production, and we'll share some of the red flags that we've encountered over the years of making movies that led us down the path of a cheap film versus an inexpensive, decent-looking and sounding movie.
Other than just not doing any pre-production whatsoever, because that I do feel like is sort of a guarantee.
Yeah, that's a big red flag.
Pretty cheap-looking film.
Yeah, how are we going to define pre-production, Victoria?
For the sake of this podcast episode, pre-production is only going to cover writing your script, creating and planning your art department, securing your locations, locking in your crew, and rehearsals.
Yes, rehearsals. Those are super important.
They are. And I feel like those get overlooked a lot, even on major budget production. Well, even our friends over at Films Fights with Friends podcast said the same thing, that even on giant Hollywood multi-million-dollar budget films, rehearsals get skipped all the time.
Yeah, and I was looking for some examples of some heavy-duty rehearsals on a film set, and I ran into a story about the Steadicam operator on Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas.
Okay.
I'll include a link in the description. I'm saying that right now to remind myself to put that in there. But this is from Larry McConkey, and there's a famous shot of the entering of the Copa Club in the Goodfellas movie, and the main character hands off his keys to the person who valet. Thank you. The driver of the car.
The car driver.
People who drive other people's cars.
Thieves.
Yes.
That's what they're called.
Grand Theft Auto. But so the Steadicam operator actually ended up directing the scene. And like I said, I'll put the link of the video in the comments. It's just free on YouTube. But it was really interesting to see that they had to rehearse this over and over and over and over again to make it look cool. Because it started off as just a tracking shot of this guy walking into the Copa.
Which I do think is an important thing to call out. Inherently, tracking oneers are not interesting. You're just following the back of somebody.
This isn't a third-person video game.
Yeah.
This is a film.
So you do have to put a lot of art and time into it. So just having it in the script or even just a shot note of, we'll just do a tracking oneer and it'll look great. Good on that Steadicam op for stepping up and being like, hey, I know this isn't technically my job, but...
Yeah, and Ray Liotta, he actually came up with a lot of the blocking, I guess, because, the Steadicam op was... obviously didn't want to make it look like he did a bad job. Yes. So he was taking ownership of this, which if you're on an indie film set, sometimes that's a little bit scary. Me personally doing sound work, and if I'm just on the location sound end of something and I'm not on the post sound end of something, I always kind of run that risk if they're like, no, we're not going to hand that off to you. I keep my fingers crossed and I'm like, well, I hope this doesn't sound awful, and then it ends up on my IMDb page. It's tricky. So anyway, the Steadicam op worked with Ray Liotta to get some blocking. He was like, okay, you got to lean this way. Let's, one of the big parts of that is they walk through the kitchen through the scene. And I guess they just walk in a big circle, but they were just trying to keep it interesting.
Yeah.
Because the lighting in the kitchen is flat, and bright.
It's going to be really harsh fluorescent lights.
Yeah. And then moving back into the club again, it was like, okay, this is interesting dynamics in the light. And so they just went ahead and blocked it that way to keep it moving. But anyway, so
That's really cool.
You can check that out. Do you have some examples on your film sets? I mean, we can beat rehearsals to death. Just rehearse. But what are some things that you did that led you down the path of, oh boy, I'm embarrassed of this movie?
Well, again, other than just completely ignoring pre-production as a whole and just showing up and being like, pre-production is easy. You write your script, and if it's an action movie, you show up with your prop gun.
There.
Done.
Nice.
That's all you have to do for pre-pro. No, other than that, the worst thing I think I did for pre-production was a 17-page script.
Okay.
For a film that was not allowed to be longer than 12 minutes, including final credits.
So those of you that don't know out there, usually it's a page a minute.
Usually. If you're really ambitious, sometimes you could get like 3 pages to like 2.5.
Yeah, it's not gonna be
try real hard.
It's gonna be pretty hard to get 3 pages down to 2.
Oh yeah,
minutes.
You're not gonna do that.
No, it's rough.
You're not gonna do that.
It's real rough.
Unless you turn it into a clip show.
That was the first 48-hour film festival I did with my brother. We ended up with, I think it was like a 15-page script for a 6-minute movie.
Yeah.
And then when we cut it together, we're like, this is 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's just the way it works.
It's so annoying too, because every time in my head I'm like, well, there's so much direction in here and there's so much like fluffy detail and it'll be so much faster than it actually reads on the page. No, it never is. It never is. And what's the worst that happens? Your script or your final movie is just a little bit tighter and a little bit shorter and a little bit more compressed and enjoyable. Great. Always plan for 1 minute a page. Always.
Cut the pages out before you get to cutting it out in the edit.
Yes.
Because I've done that before too. So we did a one-shot scene in our very first feature film that I filmed with my brother. And we just ended up slashing the whole thing. Yeah. And it wasn't very well rehearsed. We didn't have live sound, and so we had to try to ADR it. Yeah. And the way that it went is like it was the main character was chatting on the phone and saying something like, "Is this a joke?" And then it's kind of like a record scratch moment, and then it pans over to this person on a bench that's like, "You want to hear a joke?" And then goes on to this really long joke, and it's something that happened in my real life.
But it would be so funny if you were like in it and really privy to that and probably on set and part of the production. That would be so funny.
Yeah, no, but it didn't play well.
No, not to anybody else. That is such a niche target audience.
Yes, yeah. So I guess that's another lesson there is like, don't write a script that is so involved in your own personal life that nobody's going to get it. Inside jokes are not meant to be on film usually.
No,
I mean, there's always exceptions, but don't bank on yours being one.
No, it's never going to be as funny if you try to explain it to somebody else because it's been able to grow and build in your mind and sort of like a legend now. Yeah. And it's not to anybody else.
No. So, it never comes across that way in the actual edit. Do you have any other areas of pre-production that you've gone down where it's like, this is definitely a bad path?
I have this horrible habit for locking in crew. If I either ask 1 or 2 people and get a no, or I'm just too afraid to ask because I'm anticipating the no. Then I just sort of tell myself, oh, it's fine. I'll just do it. I can just do it myself. I don't need a gaffer. I could just do it. And that's always a lie. I always need a gaffer. Even if I'm on camera and directing, which I don't necessarily think you should be doing both. But but some people love to do that. Yeah. And kudos to them.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I don't think you should also be in charge of all of your gaffing then.
No.
That's probably bad.
Yeah.
And also your focus puller and also your own like B cam and all. Yeah, just don't do it, No.
You're not going to do a bunch of the jobs well.
No, you're not. You're going to end up with what's the worst that could happen, which was a short that I did make where it was basically I approached Chuck and said, "Hey, Chuck, you want to make a movie? I've got like 30 actors, and we're the whole crew."
Yep, it was the 2 of us.
No, we had Kat hop in, and then Elizabeth hopped in. We had some people hop in and were willing to sort of help out here and there where they could and run slate and this and that. But it was not.
You were directing and cinematographer, and I was booming and then doing some gaffing on the side.
Yeah,
as best I could.
It was not a full-fledged crew.
Which hopefully that'll be coming out on YouTube very soon.
Yeah, actually, hopefully by the time this is posted.
Okay, if it is, we'll put a link in the description. Yes. If not, we'll just keep talking about it.
Stay tuned. You'll want to see it.
We record a couple weeks ahead of time. I have to look at my notes here because I got sidetracked. Oh boy. Oh, panic decorating classrooms. I may have talked about this before.
I want to hear about panic decorating classrooms.
Well, that was one of those pre-production things that we skipped, and it was for Stockton to Table Rock, which is on Amazon Prime right now. And it turned out okay, luckily. But we went into shoot in a school.
The whole movie is great. This particular panic decorating classrooms turned out okay.
Correct.
Just to clarify that.
Thank you. So we secured a school, and we secured the school when the school was open. And I'm fairly certain I've shared this before, but then when we got into shoot we shot during the summer.
Yeah.
And they take down all the decorations so that they can repaint and do work on everything. So none of the classrooms had decorations up. None of the hallways had decorations up. And so it was 100% pure panic when we arrived that day.
It's either a school or a mental institution.
Yeah,
we don't
exactly.
know
Yeah, it was close. Fortunately,
which could have been a fun twist on Stockton to Table Rock if the whole thing was actually just a mental institution.
But we had done the rehearsals ahead of time, so we didn't want to make too many changes.
We didn't need a Shutter Island moment here.
No.
Okay, so then actually, I guess slightly on the subject of Stockton to Table Rock, since I think it came up for this particular one, before we move into the inexpensive hacks that can keep your film from looking cheap.
Yes.
The difference being inexpensive to cheap. So before we go into that, Chuck, do you have a cheap trick for us?
Yes,
Not the band?
Cheap trick, not the band. I can't audio drop that. I'll just do it. Cash register ringing up.
It'd be really cool if we could drop the band, though.
So people talk, yeah, I know, but they flag us so much.
They would get so upset.
Yeah. We don't want to be demonetized before we're monetized.
I want them to want us.
Yes. Good one. I like that. So back to Stockton to Table Rock, that was a $10,000 feature film, and so we had to get creative. Mm-hmm. We shot it on a Steadicam, or Danny Clamorous, our cinematographer, shot on a Steadicam.
Yeah.
And so for the dolly shots, one of the dolly shots that we got, which is inside of a hospital scene, we just used a wheelchair because it happened to be on set. And to make the shot more interesting, we wanted to add movement. And so Danny sat on the wheelchair with a Steadicam. And then my brother, the director, pushed and pulled him around. And it turned out 100% fine, which you hear about that all the time. Like use a wheelchair or use like an office chair to move around a camera on set if you're in a pinch. He did have the Steadicam on his lap.
That feels like the better choice, right? But also I will say I would trust a hospital chair over an office chair.
For sure.
And maybe that's just because I've worked at some pretty typical corporate environments where those office chairs are not, that's not a smooth ride. It's never going to be a smooth ride.
No.
And at least in a hospital, you know, that it's not going to be the weird Berber carpeting on top of concrete.
Yeah.
Like you're going to have in an office building. And then it's also in a hospital chair, the actual wheelchair. You're going to have, hopefully, a smoother ride.
Yeah, absolutely. And having not just setting it on a chair, obviously, because that's going to pick up every vibration. If you want to talk about making cheap-looking movies, we did screw up on that early on because we tried to make our own equipment when my brother and I were teachers. And a lot of stuff did not work out.
Yeah.
And in the realm of dolly building, we did the PVC pipe dolly that we made ourselves, but then we found an old set of rollerblades in the attic, and so we tore those apart, and with the PVC pipe we mounted some rollerblade wheels onto those to roll the tripod back and forth.
Which is very creative thinking.
Yeah, but it didn't work.
And had you just gone and splurged for the new inline skate wheels, or even just typical classic skate wheels or skateboard wheels.
Yeah, it would have been, but the wheels were used, and so they were kind of worn out, and so it made all the shots bumpy.
That would, though it probably better. I attempted one of those, I'm sure everybody has one of these at some point in their filmmaking careers, those really cheap little, like you just put your tripod onto it, and it's got the caster wheels underneath.
Yes.
And it's just like a little handle, and you just fold it out, and there's 3 wheel caster wheels, and you pull out your tripod.
It's just like wheels that go underneath your tripod.
Exactly. And you tell yourself, this is going to be so cool. I'm going to get so many great moving shots.
Dolly that is not limited by the railing system.
Yeah. Forget left and right. I can go anywhere. I can follow people.
You can't.
No, you cannot. That is the bumpiest thing.
And it looks like crap.
Oh, man. And I used that in one really long scene and did my best to make it work, but it was so loud we couldn't even get it out of the audio. Like you heard it.
Yeah.
We had somebody running location sound, and it was so loud and so bumpy and so shaky. It was It was the worst.
The noise is the other factor. Yeah, the squeaky wheels.
And that was like a smooth, glossy hardwood floor of like a dance studio. And I was like, if it's not going to work on that,
no, you're toast.
Yeah, it's never going to work on anything.
That is going in the trash, or you sell it to a film student and hope that you don't lose too much money. No,
I've kept it as just sort of a precautionary tale to myself. Like, don't ever sink this low again.
Nice.
Don't do it.
It's a literal equipment skeleton in your closet.
It's there to haunt me.
I like it. Let's talk about some of the things that we've done to make our stuff look. It's inexpensive approach.
Yes.
And one of my favorite examples in a film is Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Okay.
They planned on not having a horse for the king. And so they used coconuts in that movie instead of having a horse. And they realized they weren't going to have a budget to have a horse on set all the time.
Because the original script said horse.
Yes. I believe so, yeah.
And then when the budget got set with the script, then all of a sudden it was like, oh, okay, so definitely not real horse.
We're gonna have to cut horse. So what do we do at the script level to make this a creative decision rather than we're just gonna shoehorn something in, or And they did a good job with that.
They did. The coconut decision was the right one. It's still so funny. And it's so funny on so many levels, right? Because there wouldn't be coconuts there. It opened itself up to the swallows, unladen swallow joke later. Like, that landed.
And I feel like that's where the inexpensive aspect needs to start, in my opinion, is at the script level.
Yeah.
And that's a lesson that I've learned over and over again, unfortunately, trying to do things like a sci-fi movie about the singularity. It ended up looking a little cheap because...
Okay, but to be fair, what year was that?
That was I think we shot it in like 2013, 2014, I want to say.
Okay, so more than a decade later now.
Yeah.
To be fair, there are enough AI platforms out there that you could probably do a little bit more with the special effects and visual effects stuff now at an easier... what is that? The slope of entry point or whatever that's called. We're like
the singularity. You mean? No. The elbow of the exponential curve, where we're reaching it right now, and basically AI is going to take over the world, and we're all done. Well, anyway, you can see it all in this movie I made.
It was very meta to suggest
brother.
Using AI on that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. Yes. If you would like to see
the end of civilization, no, it's
Brown Truck, right?
Yeah, Brown Truck is the name of the movie. Yes. But,
classic.
It was a little rough. But instead of moving forward, what we learned was that it's important to write what you know how to accomplish.
Yeah.
And make sure that you're staying within the realm of your ability, and while still extending yourself, but you don't want to extend yourself on multiple realms, like multiple times in one shooting day.
Yeah.
Right? Like, for example, on your short film Dive, you had a complicated moving shot planned.
Yes.
That was not necessary for the film.
It was not. It would have been really cool.
It was a nice to have, but you planned accordingly. Like, if we can get this, we can get this. If not, we're going to cut it because it was already a super aggressive shooting schedule.
Aggressive shooting schedule.
And that was just basically two people having a conversation at a bar.
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't need the motion. It didn't need to be overcomplicated. It wasn't a requirement, but it would have been really, really cool. And Danny, again, the cinematographer, because apparently this episode, despite being very pre-production, is all about praising Danny.
Oh,
and
yes.
Rightfully so.
Well, it helps to have a cinematographer who does an excellent job of gaffing. Well, Lee helped out in gaffing on yours too.
Yeah.
But it's nice that we work with a lot of people. I want to say that too. That was one of the points I wanted to bring up, is working with the same crew and or cast over and over again on smaller projects. That's going to help you learn what is possible.
Yeah.
So there are fewer unknowns when you go into something, because that's
very true.
I feel like it's really important to build a rapport on set, and that's going to help you execute things less expensively because you can get them done more quickly.
Yeah, and you're comfortable with these people. You know exactly how to ask for what you're asking for. I will say that's one of my actual tips is I do very specific, intentional, coordinated meetings with my crew.
Yeah.
So everybody on my crew knows what the shot list is. Everybody knows where we're shooting. They know what the space looks like. They've seen it. They've toured it. If they weren't able to be there physically and get a tour of it, I took way too many photos and flooded it all in a Slack or a Discord channel somewhere, and they are sick of it, but they're there and they can see it and they know the space, they know what to expect, and they know what the shoot day is going to consist of.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I do think that's an important thing to keep in mind too.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, rehearsals.
It's like rehearsals, but it's like a crew meeting in addition to a rehearsal, because I do want my crew there if possible for rehearsals. Because I want my crew to be able to plan out, like especially the cinematographer.
Yeah.
If they can, I want them to see the space and the actors and get an idea for what's happening and what we're trying to communicate and what I'm really pushing for with the actors, so that way the cinematographer can be like, oh, you know what, shot's gonna totally like just sell this. I want this, 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 and this. Yeah. And they can use that to kind of craft their shot list.
Nice. And what advice do you have for people as far as like getting people on board at an inexpensive rate? Maybe talented crew, talented cast, because that's another huge barrier to overcome for those that are trying to make films.
Well, ask nicely. No, I'm kidding.
Don't demand that they work cheap and or free or for credit or for future payment.
Oof, no, never promise somebody like, when this makes money, then we'll go into profit shit. No, it won't.
Good luck.
It
might. I'd never say never say die, but
I guess that's fair. And plenty of people wasn't there somebody in like Star Wars or something who like signed away their like Darth Vader?
Oh yeah, we talked about that. Yeah, the original Darth Vader didn't get a cut.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So I guess never mind. You know what? Hey, promise whatever you want. You never know what could happen.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to come down to knowing the person and knowing their motivators, right? Because not everybody is motivated by money.
No.
Though it is a great motivator. So if you've got a big budget, fantastic. Love that. Use it because money talks. But if you don't, I do think there are other things that you can work around. There was this movie called I think it was just called The Monkey, or maybe The Monkey's Paw.
Okay.
I think it was just called The Monkey. It was recent.
Yeah.
And it was originally supposed to be a Stephen King dollar baby back when that program still existed.
Okay.
But it got taken off the list. But one guy had already really had his heart set on making it.
Okay.
And actually made an entire campaign appealing to Stephen King to be able to please let me make this dollar baby movie with this script because it's the one I fell in love with. Stephen King ended up saying yes and coming back and being like, okay, let's do this. And then it ended up getting so much like notoriety and credit and stuff that it actually got a really big budget behind it. And it actually ended up being this whole big Stephen King film that was released, I want to say in either end of 2024 or early 2025.
Yeah.
It was very recent. And they had not a huge budget, but definitely a budget, and Elijah Wood in it.
Oh.
And
I haven't seen this.
It's entertaining. It's definitely like kind of campy. They did a good job with it, and you got to keep in mind it's a Stephen King. It started as like a dollar baby, right? It's one of Stephen King's short stories that's not super well known. It's not a very common one. It's this really creepy monkey puppet doll thing, and some surprisingly good young actors in it playing these young brothers. Anyway. It's good. I do recommend it. It's fun. It's wild. It's weird. It's a horror movie. Have a good time with it.
Yeah.
But it has Elijah Wood in it.
Yeah.
Not because they can necessarily afford Elijah Wood's day rate.
Yeah.
But because they could offer him a really weird, really wild, really uncomfortable role in this one-of-a-kind movie.
Yeah.
That he would be like, okay, that's interesting enough to get to play that part. You've got it set, so I only have to be there for one shooting day. I can give you one day at a vastly discounted rate as long as I get to do something exciting and interesting.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised how many actors actually will do that. And I assume the same goes for costumers, choreographers, cinematographers, gaffers. Like, ask, find out, and don't be afraid to haggle. I don't have money to offer you. So what would make this worth your while? and just see what they say.
Yeah.
The worst they can say is only money, and then you're out, or find a bigger budget.
But I have money coming down the pike on this one.
Yes. I'm positive this one's selling on Tubi for $5 billion.
Guaranteed.
Yes.
Almost. Yeah, it's funny to think about that as far as getting people on board, because I feel like for some reason I've had many instances where you run into people in filmmaking, and some of them just kind of come off as like self-centered narcissists. No offense to any of you out there that are filmmakers, but
I'm sure we've never come across that way on this podcast.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. But people that aren't like that, no. The excitement about the project is one thing, but the empathy towards other people and helping them make their goals or reach goals and finding a synergistic approach to be able to get a project done is a different one.
Yeah.
And the people that, at least in this film community in Boise, Idaho, not huge, but there are people that have like come and gone.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that were always excited, but then making promises that they couldn't keep, versus the ones that continue to make movies, continue to move up, continue to get more notoriety. And those are the ones that are, creative collaborators.
Yeah.
And if Martin Scorsese can hand over the direction of a scene
to a Steadicam
operator, and this is 1990, Goodfellas.
Yeah.
And so he already had a few movies under his belt, and he obviously had more in the future. But for him to be able to let go of creative control, it's one of those things, if you're trying to make something inexpensively, it is probably important that you let go of creative control, because you want to get buy-in from those people that are really skilled at what they're doing.
Yeah. And I have that story about Danny as the cinematographer for Dive, because I thought it was too big of an ask to ask him to be the cinematographer. So I asked him if he would just gaff, because that seemed like less of a demand on his time. Mm-hmm. But he didn't want to gaff. So he said no.
Work.
Yeah, he wanted to be a cinematographer. Yeah. So by the time we finally sorted that out, then it was like, oh, okay, this is a no-brainer. I should have just asked for what I wanted in the first place.
See what people will do.
Yeah.
And work around their schedule.
Exactly.
And be flexible with your script.
Yeah.
To make sure that you can hold on to those ideas for later. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about too, about making something inexpensively, is if you're setting time aside to think of creative ideas constantly, you'll have ideas to pull from.
Yeah.
Which is
just a running log.
What my brother and I did when we did our Chit Chat series. And he always writes.
Yeah.
He's a writer, though, on top
that helps.
of a director, but he writes all the time. But it's good to have those ideas in the background that you can pull from. I'll do that with my music. I have an ongoing music journal where I just write music constantly, and it goes in there. And then if I need something for some project or something, I can pull a little bit of an idea from my backlog, rather than having to come up with something from scratch. So if you're a filmmaker out there, it's probably a good idea to come up with many different ideas.
Just keep them somewhere in a note, in a notebook, in a spreadsheet. I do that too. You never know. You never know when you're going to need it, or when it's going to be handy, or when it's just going to make a good story at a dinner party and you desperately need to kill the time, not just because it was recently the holidays or anything and we were all around a bunch of family members we didn't have anything to say to. That wouldn't really happen. Anyway, one other thing that I would like to mention.
Please do.
As far as cheap versus inexpensive, is it is important to know the difference, I guess, in the two. So in my mind, cheap is cutting corners, but inexpensive is choosing wisely.
Okay, I like that.
One example from my personal life is when I was directing Evil Dead, the musical.
Okay.
I had the option, do I go really, really big budget and make it look all out and amazing and awesome? Or do I accept that this is a community theater? Mm-hmm. So the budget isn't there. And also it's based off a B horror movie. I can lean in to that B horror vibe. Or a more popular option that people might know, since apparently not everybody knows Evil Dead the musical, which is a shame, is Murder Party, the movie.
Oh, yeah, Murder Party.
Yeah, where this guy needed a Halloween costume, and he's the lead character and in this costume for the entirety of the film.
Yeah.
And it's made of cardboard and duct tape.
Yeah.
Because it's just what he had available. He got invited to a last-minute Halloween party, and he threw together a last-minute costume. And it looks last-minute. Now, obviously, it's definitely, if it holds up for that long through that many days of filming and everything, it was obviously a little bit more high quality than it looked.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, the jokes were not, dependent upon his costume looking like a real robot. It could look like a guy dressed up in cardboard boxes and duct tape.
Yeah. That was a great example. Murder Party. That's
Murder
nice.
Party was so good.
And lean into some of that embarrassment.
Yeah.
You're going to be embarrassed. At least for me, I'm always embarrassed when I look back at the things that I've done previously.
If you're not, it means you're not growing as a filmmaker.
Yeah, so
that's a good thing. It's okay.
Rather than shooting for the stars and cutting corners, maybe just be prepared that this is not going to be the most amazing thing that's ever been created on the face of the earth.
No.
But enjoy the process as you're making it, and rather than overextending yourself and making it uncomfortable along the way, figure out ways to plan to make it as good as you possibly can make it while still keeping it well under budget if you have a budget, or time budget. I mean, that's always something that people have to be concerned about when they're getting volunteers or people that are going to work for much less than their usual day rate because your project is way more interesting than another corporate talking head video.
Yeah. You'd be surprised what you can get just by having a creative narrative project.
Yeah.
That isn't just boring.
Another snoozer.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, shall we talk about our Filmmaker of the Week?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sweet. I think I'm going to read this one this week. So our Filmmaker of the Week is Janae Rachel Ballot. And this is kind of a fun story here. It's when life gives you lemons.
This is the epitome of when life gives you lemons.
You're supposed to get the vodka ready.
Yeah.
Is that the line?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Either way,
something about lemonade or something. I don't know.
You drink it.
Yes.
You drink it. So after numerous attempts to use industry connections and traditional studio pitches to make a movie about her life, Janae took it on herself to simply grab a camera, get her friends to play themselves, and visit old childhood homes and haunts, sometimes even without a script, to capture the story and tell it in the most true-to-life way possible. Things were running smoothly enough, spare one shoot day that kept getting rescheduled. Finally, the night before the problematic shoot, Jane was stoked to get the footage and some errands done at the same time and found herself in the path of a car traveling at 35 miles an hour.
Which doesn't sound like the fastest thing in the world, but man, when you consider not moving and suddenly being met by something going that speed.
Not fun. So anyway, she got hit. She was in the hospital, and that actual incident, then she decided to make it part of the script,
which I think is really cool.
So that's the vodka part of the story. Janae, so congrats on making the most out of that situation. We hope that you're doing better. And we're excited to see the film, which is Dissociated Me.
Yeah, it sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And that's a really cool way to take something that, could have been a total showstopper.
Absolutely.
I feel like that could have easily been interpreted as, okay, well, we're not finishing this movie.
Yeah, but people are going to make excuses not to make a movie all the time. Yeah. Usually if they get to some point, it's like these are the type of people that are just going to get it done.
Yeah.
So, Janae, good on you.
Congrats.
Get that film done.
And thanks for being our Filmmaker of the Week. And if you would like to be our featured Filmmaker of the Week, please head to indiefilmpodcast.com/submit. And in addition to some other options for getting your film reviewed or being a sponsor of the episode, you'll also see Become a Featured Filmmaker. And you can submit and fill out the form there.
Yeah, share some information with us. You can upload an audio snippet too. We'd love to share some audio snippets. And if you have any tips, tricks that you want to share, be sure to leave a comment. Be sure to like and subscribe, especially if you made it this far into the podcast.
Yeah, we're supposed to be asking people to do that.
Yeah, we'd appreciate it greatly.
That would be wonderful.
Awesome. On that, shall we succinctly say farewell?
I think so.
Bye.
Bye.